So we're so thrilled to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio. He accomplishes the rare trifecta. He looks good on TV, sounds good on TV, and is a great guy as well. Laffit Pincay Jr., the host of the Nyron's Fox Sports broadcast.
My camera sucks, but aside from that, we're doing okay. How are you guys? Great to be on with you.
Great to have you. No, this is, I love your coverage, obviously, and we'll get this out of the way very quickly because we teased it earlier in the show where you were doing yeoman's work to try to plug the podcast when our boy Jon was on the segment on Friday. He's like, so how about Rail Talk? You guys have fun on Rail Talk, right? And Jon mentioned about 4 different things and was like, Rail Talk what? So Laffit, I just want to say thank you for doing your best. Sorry, my buddy didn't cooperate.
He's a humble man, and that's
totally.
That's to be respected. And the thing is, like, I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't true. I watched the podcast. So yeah, I wouldn't have brought it up. I wouldn't have brought it up otherwise. You guys do a great job.
No, we really appreciate that. So enough about that. Let's talk about how great the Alabama was.
He did it again. He did it again.
We're on the show itself, and he's doing it.
I did talk. I'm asking you about the race that we won, so it was a little bit of a, like a humble brag that Joe likes to say that I major in. But anyway, what were your thoughts going into it when you have Good Cheer, who rattled off 6 out of 7, and a 2-time Grade 1 winner in Lacara, and then Nitrogen, who was trying to do something that she hadn't done before?
I thought we'd see a much better version of Good Cheer than we saw in the Acorn. I know that, speed figure hawks have kind of been waiting for her to be quote unquote exposed, and that maybe that Acorn performance was the beginning of her trending in the wrong direction. I thought she'd run well. I had concerns about Lacara, the combination of all the time off, unplanned. She hadn't raced in 10 and a half weeks or 2.5 months, whatever it was.
Yeah.
She missed the CCAO through no fault of her own. She wasn't sick, just wrong place, wrong time, the quarantine situation, but she still missed the race. So now you have this layoff combined with the fact she's tackling a distance she's never raced at a mile and a quarter that she'll probably never race at again. So all that formula bugged me with Lacara going in. With Nitrogen, whom I did actually wind up going with, and not just because of the great time we had on the show a couple of days prior, I kind of ignored the surface thing, and it was like, who is the most dynamic, impressive, talented 3-year-old filly you've seen this year? And then it became really clear that it was Nitrogen. And I didn't know the way she did it. Right. And watching her kind of sidewind her way to the head of the class, but she's a must watch.
Right.
You just an exciting filly to watch. And it was a great scene on Saturday.
I'm curious. You mentioned you picking Nitrogen before the race. You've been doing the Fox broadcast for a little while now, and you have guys like Andy Serling and Jonathan Kinchin and other like public handicappers on the show with you. How much have you picked up from them? Because I'm sure you're a sharp handicapper in your own right, but it's not usually your 100% focus. How much have you picked up from them, and then how much would Andy Serling say that he's taught you?
That's like one of the first picks. That's like one of the first picks. I just don't make selections. I just don't. It was just in the rundown, Alabama selections. And it was like, Laffit's pick. I get to make a pick in this race. I don't like, that's obviously, it's more important for me to know which questions to ask than it is to know the answers. So I spend all of my time preparing for a show, kind of weaving everything together as best as possible, depending on what network we are on, what language I'm speaking, Fox, FS1 or FS2. So it's more digestible to an audience that doesn't necessarily follow the sport. So for me, it's more asking them the right questions, but all of the different metrics and data and the analytics that these guys use, it's fascinating watching them kind of crunch the numbers. So it's not so much what I've absorbed as far as learning how to handicap, because that's not where I spend my time. It's knowing how to relate the material to them, knowing how they see the race.
Right. No, that's a great answer. And some people would say your job is to herd cats. Joe and I think sometimes your job is to herd idiots, and to try to get them in the spot where for them to be looking smart and being successful. Because God knows Joe does that for me all the time.
I think there was a reference to that on the show when you were on. They were all just idiots. Andy was like, "Hey, Jon, didn't you leave your LaDuca reminded you left your window open just before the skies opened up in Saratoga?"
Oh yeah, no, we're all knuckleheads for sure. But what take people behind the curtain. What is your favorite part of the show or the pre-show, getting preparation?
I think what I enjoy most is seeing an idea, a concept, go from just that and then seeing it on paper and then actually watching it come to life on screen and it being executed properly. I mean, you can have the best concepts and ideas and a rundown put together you want, but if it's not executed properly, well, then, you just have a poor show. But watching it all come together, I think, on screen and being able to like watch, see, touch, feel your the end product, the work, and everything that goes into it. And it's a collaborative team effort. There's so many talented, tireless people and friends and colleagues that I work with that make this thing happen. And so being satisfied in the end, going home and watching it and being proud of it and proud of your colleagues, like, hey, we pulled this off. We don't have a large crew. I think one of the bigger compliments we'll get is when we're asked, like, is this a Fox Sports production? No, this is the New York Racing Association television department, doing this, operating on a Fox platform, multiple Fox platforms. So when it all comes together the way you saw it, the way you imagined, or even exceeds expectations, that's the most satisfying aspect.
Well, just the fact that, just quantitatively how many hours of television you guys have to put together over the course of a meet. Like, it's so interesting. We were talking to Lindsay Schanzer, who does the production for the NBC broadcast. And she was like, it's like the opposite of every other sport where you have like 5 minutes of intro and then 3 hours of action. Here, it's pretty much all intro and then 2 minutes of action. How much of that is like scripted out for you guys? Like, what's your run of show like? Or is there more that's a little bit off the cuff? Like, what do you go into say a 5-hour broadcast, expecting to do, and how closely does the final product line up to that?
At first, I love Lindsay and worked with her several years at NBC. She is an incredibly gifted, talented producer. And yeah, that's the biggest challenge in horse racing, is that even on like a Kentucky Derby day, let's say that I'd be on 5 hours hosting the pregame show, the undercard show leading up to the Derby, that entire afternoon, there's 22 minutes of action.
Right.
It's like, how do you keep the audience intrigued? How do you keep them interested when there's a clock right there telling them there is nothing going to happen action-wise for 32 minutes, 38 minutes, 45 minutes on a Derby day? The show itself, the parts that need to be written have to be written. Like, you can't, especially on a bigger broadcast, you're not gonna wing the intro. You're not, whatever, what comes to mind in that moment. Of course not. The first block, the first 10 minutes of a broadcast is going to be, tightly scripted, I think, and formatted in such that, and it moves very quickly, and that's your opportunity to really kind of grab the viewer. The elements that need to be, the quicker the turns are, that needs to be kind of thought out beforehand and navigated a couple times. We don't rehearse a lot because we don't have a lot of time to rehearse. So I really need to know the rundown. You want to feel like when you turn the page, you kind of know what's on the next page, and that you always know what's next. As long as I know what's next, I'm going to be all right. And that was the biggest difference, the biggest adjustment going from, say, NBC to Fox, where when I would come to Saratoga for NBC, I would fly in on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and we'd have meetings on Friday, and I'd work on the show Thursday and Friday night, and we'd rehearse Saturday and do the show for an hour and a half Saturday evening, like dot every I, cross every T, like you were so familiar with everything. You're that confident with the material that it makes it that much easier. Here, now I'm on air 15 hours a week. Wow. There's no way to prep for everything. And there's constantly new material, being generated, whether it's your podcast or other podcasts or other, racing, all the websites that are constantly generating new material. It's really difficult to stay on top of everything while preparing for each individual broadcast. So managing time was really a huge adjustment.
What's the question that you get from the general public that surprises you, either that they don't know about racing or that, hey, that was a really, interesting question, kind of second level question? Have people come up to you on the street and asked you questions and you've been like, wow, that was really interesting?
It's a good question. When I was a kid, everybody would ask, what's the name of your dad's horse?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I think there's a misunderstanding that, like, yeah, it's in the backyard, and he just, rides it once in a while. It's amazing. I don't know if it's one in particular, but when you do get questions from someone who may have just watched the Kentucky Derby or the Belmont Stakes, that they watch 3 horse races a year,
right,
it makes you remember when you're on a network broadcast, the audience that you're speaking with, and the questions that they have are so different than anything we would likely discuss on this conversation here, because we're all racing fans. We know the game, the simplicity of it, and then you have to kind of remember that when you execute these broadcasts, because this is what that 9 out of 10 watching a Fox broadcast, this is what they're thinking, and the only way to communicate to them without speaking down to them is educating at the same time. So I don't know that any one question comes to mind. I think I'm always taken aback by this genuine interest, but just simple questions that we wouldn't think of necessarily. But remember that we're talking to that audience as well, and that box needs to be checked.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. And I you were talking about before about adjusting the language based on Fox FS1. Like, that's really impressive that you guys are able to do that kind of on the fly, but it really is a vastly different audience a lot of the time. I'm curious what you guys might talk about off the air that's in terms of like the problems that racing has, some of the things that are plaguing the sport. Because I feel like it's very easy to be at Saratoga and to feel awesome about racing. Like, there's so much great action. Everyone's having a good time. I think the sales, like the numbers are insane. But you guys are around racing enough to know that we have some structural issues that we have to deal with and are dealing with to a certain extent. Take us a little bit behind the curtain in that way. When you guys are off air and you start talking about the larger scale issues of the sport, what are some of the first things that come up?
Oh, wow. I mean, Saratoga is almost like everything that's so much of what's right with the sport. And you'll come up here and spend some time and remember why you fell in love with the game to begin with. What a Saturday is supposed to feel like at Saratoga. But aside from that, and the several issues that have plagued the sport for a while, the fact that we're not the NFL, so we can't afford to be as tribal as we are, yet it seems like everybody is just on their own island, looking out for themselves to protect themselves and their own pasture, and that's it. There isn't enough cooperation in that regard. I don't know what the answer is when it comes to some sort of governing body, but we definitely need that. I don't agree with everything that Casse has done and some of the decisions that have been made, but I think it's been kind of this rocky road, this treacherous path towards where we need to be, and much more where you have consistency as far as medication from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. That alone can be so confusing for horsemen and trainers. In many cases, I think that trainers you'll get a positive and they weren't trying to take an edge. They just perhaps didn't know the rules changed from one state to the next. There's a lot there. And when you look at it, you take in this, when you look at everything wrong that needs to be addressed, it can be really overwhelming. It's more or less where you try to, and I think this is part of trying to educate viewers, and why I think television for the sport is so, not just, us, just the more that we are available in homes is important. I think that if you can focus on one thing at a time, and get more people that have real influence on the same page and cooperating and working with one another, I think that these issues become, when you can tackle things kind of one at a time.
Yep. No, that's a very good answer. Laffit, last question for me is, you have so many days that you're on air, so many races that you're covering. Is there ever a time where you look at the overnight, you look at the racing form, you look and you see what horses are in there, what people are involved, the connections, where you go, I can't wait to talk about that? Like, is there a special day? Is it Travers Day, or is it a specific race, or like I said, a group of people that may be, owning and training the horse, where you're like, I can't wait to talk about this story?
Up here, it's the 2-year-olds. It's the future. It's when you're there for a special debut, for a 2-year-old that does something like what Uncle Moen did in his debut. I was there when Ways and Means debuted, and I was there when Golden Pal graduated in his third career start in the Skidmore a couple of years back.
Right.
You immediately become a fan. And how you felt in that moment, and then watching these horses maximize their potential, if in fact they do. Those are when I see a really good 2-year-old race with pedigree that jumps off the pages. Get really excited to share that because it's relatable to a general audience. Here's a rookie. This could be rookie of the year, that kind of thing. This is where it all starts. There's certain, I hope that we never get tired of discussing the Ortiz brothers, only because it comes up so often. Familiarity breeds contempt. It's such a special story that once it's no longer here, we're going to realize what a special time this was to watch the Manning brothers, to watch the Williams sisters, horse racing's version, compete and do this several times a day. And just any Saturday at Saratoga, the fact that we get to feed off of the energy of the crowd and showing the crowd being there and part of it, it's very different than covering a grade 1 event somewhere else in front of where there isn't that same type of, enthusiasm from a crowd being there. So that's what, comes to mind for the most part up here that I get most excited about. Every Saturday is like walking into, I'm a big Dodger fan, walking into Dodger Stadium for a playoff game, something along those lines. That's what it feels like walking into Saratoga on Saturday.
I think when you were listening to those 2-year-olds, though, you mispronounced Ewing's name.
Did he really?
No. He didn't say Ewing.
No way. No way. Not my guy.
Frank's best call of the meet.
Yeah.
By a city block.
That's right. That's why it was so great.
That was
awesome.
Tremendous. Yeah, that was so good. All right, last question for me. And I remember this from when we had you on the old show, I think a couple of years ago. You kind of got your start in journalism at News 12. And for anybody who's in the city in Brooklyn or the Bronx, they're very well familiar with News 12. Great local news station. What do you miss most about those days before you became, a big racing and TV star?
No, it was so much fun, but at the same time, overwhelming and intimidating and fish out of water. And it sounds, really sexy. First television job and you're working in the number one market. All right. I'm like a one-man band running around in the South Bronx with a tripod, while everybody else is with their news van and their crew. Like if I wanted to set up a stand-up, I'd have to put something on the ground and focus on it on myself and white balance and go back and make sure the video wasn't blue and do all these other things that, you did everything on your own. But it turned out to be just this incredible experience because I learned how to appreciate all the behind the scenes stuff that takes place along with being in front of the camera. Covered a lot of Manhattan college basketball, covered a lot of Fordham football. It was a great time. And if I hadn't taken it, I was still in school, hadn't finished, was going to transfer. That was the plan anyhow, and got this offer to go work at News 12 at 22. And I don't know that I'm still in television if not for that experience.
Wow. I love that so much. It's local news is great, but especially in New York City, they're the ones who get things done. Like they report on leaky ceilings and lights being off when they shouldn't be, and the city goes and takes care of those things because local news is covering them. So I'm so glad that you have those stripes in the media. It's amazing.
It was so great, and covering basketball, high school basketball in the Bronx is just next level.
Dude, I used to do that too. St. Raymond's, oh man.
I covered it was Kenny Satterfield when he was there, and Andre Barrett, who wound up a point guard at Seton Hall, and Andre Sweet, who I think went to St. John's, and these kids, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. It's like I'm at the flipping NCAA tournament now. And the crowds in these gyms, it was electric. It's a lot
incredible.
Like the way high school football is portrayed in Texas and Friday Night Lights. The equivalent to the high school basketball that I covered while I was there. It was very cool.
Wow.
Yeah. No, that was my first job in sports, and I watched Kemba Walker go into the St. Raymond's gym and light up for 30 points in front of one of the most hostile crowds you'll ever see in your life. Oh, it's so great. Lance Stevenson, I saw all those guys. So, I'm so glad you have that background, too. It really sounds like it.
There was, I remember Kenny Satterfield shooting free throws in the opponent's gym or wherever they were playing, in the entire gym, and he was awesome, man. They were overrated every single free throw, and he would just kind of look at that, and it was right through the crease. It was so cool.
They're ruthless. It's like it's much closer to like Rucker Park than Madison Square Garden.
Right?
In terms of the atmosphere.
Yep.
And that's why we make the best basketball players, because the kids got to go through that gauntlet to make it to the league.
Ready. No, they're ready. They're not going to be intimidated, playing in a hostile environment as they go through college and eventually the next level and all that. Yeah, that's.
Well, I would say the same thing about you guys. I mean, when Rapoli was up in my man Joe's face, we were doing the interview. Joe was like, he was like, I was in fetal position, sucking my thumb, and Joe was like, "Come on, bring it."
Yeah, it's like Joe's like, I'm not impressed, man.
This is a Tuesday. This is a Tuesday for me.
Just a guy from Brooklyn talking to a guy from Queens. Exactly. That's all that was. Mm-hmm. That's our love language. Hey, Laffit, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the shout outs you attempted to give us on your show. Keep up the excellent work, man. Love you.
Anytime. So it was a pleasure, guys. And congratulations, Jon. That was amazing. And Joe, always great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Same here, bud.